Hello everyone, this is Ryan King, and in this beginner follow-along tutorial, we're going to be sculpting this cartoon stylized chipmunk character in Blender. So through this video, I'm going to be going through the entire process in real time, and I'll show you step by step how to sculpt this chipmunk character that you can see right here. So we're going to start by sculpting the character, and then we'll also do a little bit of modeling, like modeling the eyes. Then we will be setting up the materials, and then we're going to do some basic texture painting. And then after that, we will do some lighting, render that out, and then just do a little bit of compositing to make the final image look really nice. Now this is geared towards beginners, but if you're a complete beginner to sculpting in Blender, then I would definitely recommend watching my Sculpting with Blender for Beginners tutorial. I'll leave a link in the video description and a card right up there on the screen. And in that video, I go over all the basic things that you need to know to get started with sculpting in Blender. So I go over shortcut keys, I go over the brushes and the layout and things like that. But as long as you know just the basics of sculpting, I still will be going very slow in this video and showing you the entire process step by step. I also have a beginner tutorial on how to do texture painting in Blender. I'll leave the link in the description if you'd like to check that out as well. But as I said, I will be showing you the entire process. Now, I am going to be using a drawing tablet for the sculpting, and I would highly recommend you use a drawing tablet if you're able to. If you're interested in purchasing a drawing tablet, I will have Amazon links in the video description to some tablets that I recommend, and those are Amazon affiliate links. As an Amazon associate, I earn from qualifying purchases, so if you purchase something through those links, that will help me out, but it won't cost you anything extra. So I'm going to be using a screen drawing tablet. The screen drawing tablet that I'm using is the Huion KAMVAS GT191. Now I believe this tablet is out of production because I can't find it anywhere online, so I will have a link in the video description to a newer version of this tablet. I looked at the features of the tablet and it seems to be pretty much the same, but it's a newer model. And this is a screen drawing tablet, so I can actually draw on the screen, but you don't have to get something that fancy. Even if you can just afford a cheaper little pad tablet, that is going to be way better than using a mouse, because computer mice really just aren't made for sculpting. It's going to be a lot harder to get a good result when you're sculpting with a mouse, and also I find that it kind of hurts my wrist because you're kind of clicking very repeatedly. So even if you can just afford one of those smaller pad tablets, that will be really great. Just a couple more things before we get started. If you'd like to help support this channel and also get the project files for this tutorial, then you can purchase the project files on my Gumroad store. I'll leave the link in the description. And if you join my Patreon, then you can get the project files for this tutorial as well as all my other tutorials. And then the last thing before we get started, I wanted to thank Sketchfab for sponsoring this video. Sketchfab is an awesome 3D model site where you can preview 3D models in your browser. You can even view them on a phone, tablet, or in AR and VR. They also have a huge 3D model store where you can purchase models and assets. You can even apply to sell your own models on the platform. Check out Sketchfab with the link in the description. So I'm just going to start by double tapping A to make sure everything is selected, and then I'll just press X and then click on delete. Then I will press Shift A, and I'm going to go right down here, and I'm going to add the icosphere. You could also just add a regular sphere or add whatever object you like. I like to add an icosphere because it's very even and smooth. So I'm going to add an icosphere, and then right when you add the icosphere, you should see the little Add Icosphere Settings. For some reason in the comments of my other sculpting beginner tutorial, a lot of people have said that like this doesn't show up. I don't know why, but right when you add the icosphere, this should be here. If it's not here, you could just use like a regular sphere or whatever you want to do. So on the Add Icosphere Settings, the subdivisions right here, I like to turn this up pretty high so that it's very, very smooth, because I like a very smooth circular object to start sculpting. So I'm going to turn this way up to like a 6. You don't have to turn it up quite that high, but you can see now it's very detailed. If we tab to go into edit mode, you can see it's a very high detailed sphere that we can use to sculpt. All right, and then let's save this Blender file. So I'm going to go File, and then I'm just going to click on Save As. All right, I'm just going to save this as chipmunk.blend in a folder on my computer where I'm going to save all the files, and then I'll just click on Save As. All right, so now we can click right over here on the Sculpting tab, and it's going to bring us into the sculpting layout, and you can see it's also brought us into the Sculpt mode. Now there are a few things that I like to set up before we get started with the sculpting. So these settings right over here, all these settings are up here, so I don't really need this right here. So what I'm going to do is hover my pen right over here until the little crosshair appears, and then I'm going to click drag up, and then let go. And then I want to close this one as well. So I'm going to hover my pen right over here, click, drag over, and then let go. Just so that that's out of the way, just so that we have a little bit more space to sculpt, because all of the settings I'm going to need are right up here. All right, and then I also want to turn on the symmetry, because if I just like click and draw and start to sculpt, you can see that it's not symmetrizing it, and for the squirrel or the chipmunk's face, it's going to be mirrored over, so we can just sculpt half of it. So to turn on the symmetry, you can click on the little X button right up here. You can see like it looks like maybe a little butterfly or something, so it's symmetrical. And now you can see there's that little blue dot, and if I start to sculpt, it's going to mirror it to the other side. So that is good. I'll just press Ctrl Z though to undo my sculpt. All right, and then I also want to turn on the Dyn Topo. I really like to use the Dyn Topo workflow, because what that'll do is it'll add more clay as you sculpt. So I'm going to do that. So I'm going to click on this little button right here, click on OK, and then right here on the Dyn Topo, the detail size, I'm going to turn this way down to like 3, because I like it to be very high detailed. If your computer is being a bit laggy or it's not keeping up, then you don't need to turn it up that high. All right, and then just a few more things I like to do. Right here on brush, if you click on this brush here, I like to turn on accumulate and front faces only. These are just some really helpful tools that I like to turn on while sculpting. If you want to learn more about these, I will leave a link in the description to my video on how I set up Blender for sculpting, and I kind of like talk about all these different things. All right, and then just the last thing that I like to do is I like to change the matte cap, because I don't really like this matte cap. It's just kind of a white one. I mean, it's fine for 3D modeling, but for sculpting, I don't really like it. So I'm going to click right here, and you can see that it says matte cap. And you can see when I click right here on the sphere, there's a bunch of different matte caps to choose from. Now, you're probably not going to see all these matte caps, because I've actually added in my own matte caps, and I have also created my own matte caps. If you'd like to learn how to create your own matte caps, I have a video on that. But the matte cap that I like to use is this one, this red one, and it's built into Blender, so you should see it. So I'm going to use this one for sculpting. I just really like how it looks. And then also, if you want to go ahead and grab some reference images of stylized squirrels, I just went online, looked at some reference images of like 3D stylized squirrel characters, and I just have them on a separate monitor just so that I can look at them while I'm sculpting. So let's get started now. So what I'm going to do is press G or click right over here on the grab brush, and then I can press F to make my brush bigger. What I want to do is I just want to make the sides of the chipmunk's face a little bit flatter. So I'm just going to click and start to tap and kind of push this in. Just kind of push that in, something like that. Okay, so it's just a little bit flatter on the sides here. And remember, the symmetry is turned on. Make sure that's turned on so that it mirrors it over. And then I'm going to click right over here on the clay strips brush. This is my favorite brush. And I'm going to start by kind of making like the muzzle or the nose and the mouth. So I'm just going to start by going up and down here. I'm just pushing on the tablet. And we're just kind of popping this out to make the nose and the mouth of the squirrel. All right, and then if you want to sculpt back in, I want to do that a little bit right here. What you can do is you can hold down the Control key as you sculpt, and that'll start to push clay back in. So instead of adding clay, it's going to remove clay. So I'm just going to go along here, just kind of push it in a little bit. This is where like the eyes are going to be. And then let's go down here to the bottom, and I want to make like a little chin. So I'm just going to kind of go around here, kind of bring out a chin. I'm just going to go around, kind of make the bony shape of the bottom of the chin and the jaw right here. Just kind of going around here, kind of popping out that jaw. It's not a very big jaw, but the chipmunk definitely has a jaw. And then I'm going to press Control S, or you can just go right here and go File and just click on Save, just to save the file as we're working. So I just press Control S continually as we're sculpting. Every now and then I just press Control S to save our project. All right, now I kind of want to make in between the squirrel's eyes, I want to kind of make that come out. So I'm just going to go up and down here and maybe even go along the forms. Just going back and forth, kind of bringing out some clay and then going around here. Just like that. All right. Just bringing it out a little bit more like that. So this is like in between the squirrel's eye, and then here's going to be the squirrel's eye. So let's start to carve in the eye. So I'm going to hold down the Control key and then just start to go around in circles. And we're just going to start to carve in the eye socket, and then we will be using a different object and then put an eye into the eye socket. So the eye is actually going to be a different object. We're just making the eye socket. And I want the squirrel's eye sockets to be a little bit more on the side of his head. So I don't want it to be like super straight. I want it to be a bit more on the side of his head. And I find that that looks good. And then his eyes will kind of be pointed forward. So yeah, moving around your sculpt and looking at it from different angles as you sculpt can be really helpful to make sure you're getting the shape right. So I'm just going around here, kind of making circles, cutting that in, and I'm looking at my reference images all the time. Reference images are super important. Okay, and then I think I want those eyes to be, maybe those eye sockets to be a little bit more down, and this is like a stylized cartoony squirrel, of course, so the eyes are really big. Okay, just kind of cut that in a little bit more. Go back there. Okay, I'm going to press Control S to save again. And now I kind of want to make a little bit of a ridge kind of popping out for where the eyebrows are. So I'm just going to kind of go along here and just kind of pop a ridge out there. Just going along there, just like that. And then you could go just along it like this, just kind of bringing that out a bit. Okay. And then let's go ahead and do the big cheeks on the chipmunk. So I'm just going to start like right here. I'm just going to go back and forth, just kind of building up clay, and we'll do a few layers of this. So I'm just going to go along, kind of look at it from front view as well, kind of see how it's doing, and then just kind of keep popping it out. Just keep making more and more layers of clay. Press Control S again to save. Let's kind of look around, take a look. And then I don't want the back of the head to be quite this big out, so I'm going to press G, and that's going to go to the grab brush, and then I can just kind of tap and kind of press, and just kind of push the back of the head in a little bit, and I think I'll push the back kind of up right here. I'll push that in a bit, and maybe just make the top of the head a little bit flatter. Okay, I'm going to click right back over here to the clay strips brush, and we can keep going. All right, so I think I will pop out the nose a little bit more. So I'm going to just keep going along here, along this form, kind of just popping that out. Okay, take a look around. And then we do want to have a bit of a mouth, so I'm going to need to make the chin come out a bit more. So I'm just going to kind of go along here, back and forth, kind of popping out that chin even more. And you can see that we have like this part right here, and then we also have this part. So the nose is going to be right here. And then there's going to be like the side, kind of the side of the mouth. And then the mouth is going to be like right here. And then the chin will be right here. So I want to pop the chin out even more. So I'll kind of just go along there, bring that out. Okay, look around it from different angles. Maybe just just add more clay to the bottom of his face. And we will be adding a neck later on as well. All right, so I think that these eye sockets are a little bit too big on the bottom here. If I just kind of take a look back, they seem a little bit big. So what I'm gonna do is just add a little bit more clay down here and almost like make this a bit flat. So it's kind of round, and then it's a bit more flat here on the bottom. Just going along there, making that flatter. Okay, that is better. Let's get back to work here on kind of the front of the face. So I just want to pop it out on the sides a little bit more. And then what I want to do is I want to go kind of along the side here and just pop that out just a little bit. And then right in the middle here, I'm going to hold down the Control key and just bring it in a little bit. Basically what we're doing is we're making a very subtle curve, kind of like that. Just a very subtle curve. And then we haven't really smoothed this out as all, so we can smooth it out a bit. So what I'm going to do is hold down the Shift key, and that's going to automatically go to the smooth brush. And then what I can do is just lightly go along here and just kind of start to smooth this out a bit. Now, I don't just want to go around and smooth it just any place, because if you just smooth it out like that, you're going to kind of get rid of the forms that you've created. So you want to use the smooth brush sparingly and kind of be careful with it, because yeah, you don't want to just get rid of all of the forms you've created. So when I hold down the Shift key and just start to sculpt, I'm kind of going along the forms so that I'm smoothing it out, but then I'm still keeping the strong shapes. So you can see instead of just like smoothing that out, I'm going around it just so that it still retains its form pretty well. Okay, so you definitely don't want to overdo the smoothing, but you obviously need to smooth it out at some point because it's pretty rough. So just smoothing out those vertices. And then kind of on the cheek here, we can also do this. So just smoothing it out lightly. I'm not pressing too hard with my pen. Just going along there, kind of smoothing that out. And smoothing up the top here. And the back as well, just kind of smoothing that out. All right, so I'm going to press G again and go back to the grab brush. So I want the chipmunk to have like a bit of a smile, and then I also want to have those little buck teeth. So what I'm going to do with the grab brush is I'm just going to kind of tap and pull and just kind of bring the chin down a little bit, because I do want there to be the mouth right there. So I'm just going to bring that down. All right, that might be a little bit too far. Let's look at it from side view. All right, that is looking pretty good. And then right here, kind of underneath the chin, I want this to go a little bit up before it goes back down into the neck. So I'm just gonna tap right here, kind of push that back and up a little bit. Let's go back to the clay strips, and now I wanna make like that little form on the animal that kind of goes down from his nose and then comes over. So I'm just gonna kind of zoom in here. So his nose is gonna be right up here. So I'm just gonna start by going around, making that form, and then going down to the side. Let's press Ctrl S to save our project again. So just going along right there. All right, and then going around. And then we want his little smile to kind of go into the cheeks to kind of make the cheeks look like they're being pushed up by the smile. So the cheeks are right here. So I just want this to kind of go right up there into the cheek. And I also think I'll add just a little bit more to the cheek here. Maybe just smooth that out a little bit. Just adding a little bit more clay there. All right. And then let's make the bottom of the mouth. So like the bottom lip. So I'm just going to go along and just kind of connect this up. You could also go along the form there. Just kind of bringing that up, and then these two, so this one and this one, they're going to connect right here. All right, and then I think I'll just make a little bit of a form kind of right there, kind of as a crease on the side of his mouth, just like that. All right, let's press Ctrl S to save again. And then let's fill out this form, because there's kind of an empty space here, so I really want to fill this out. Going along there, okay. Filling that all in, and then we can just hold down the Shift key and slightly smooth that out. Don't overdo it, but just kind of smooth that all out a bit, going around in little circles, and then where it might need some more clay, you can just add a little bit more clay there. Okay, and then smoothing that out. All right, I think that is looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and do the chipmunk's nose now. So using the clay strips brush, I kind of just want to make a simple stylized like triangle nose. So I'm going to just kind of zoom in here, and then I'm just going to start by going out and then going down. Basically just making a triangle shape. Not too sharp, I do want it to be a bit rounded, but over and then down, and then just kind of fill in the center, over and down. Let's press Ctrl S again to save our project. Kind of just take a look at that. That's pretty good. I think I do want it to be bigger though. So I'm just going to keep going, adding more form. Popping that out. And then also to make it just a little bit sharper, you can hold down the Control key and just kind of sculpt around the nose. Just sculpt around the nose like that, just to kind of push it in a little bit, and maybe push that in just a little bit. And then hold down the Shift key and you can just smooth that out. So going around there, just smoothing that out. I think I want my squirrel's nose to be a little bit more pointed this way. Right now it's kind of up like this. So what I'm going to do is press G for the grab brush, and then just kind of zoom into the front or the top and just kind of pop that out a bit, and then just kind of push it down a little bit more. All right, that is better. What I want to do now is I want to go to the crease brush because I want to kind of crease some of these edges and make them more defined. So first what I can do is just start to crease in here with the crease brush. So the crease brush is right here. I'm going to go down and just go around that nose and kind of crease it in and make that angle sharper. And then if you need to, you can hold down the Shift key and just smooth it out a little bit. Going around there, creasing that in. And then right here around the nose, I kind of want to pop that form out as well. So what I'm going to do is hold down the Control key as I sculpt with the crease brush. So when you just normally sculpt with the crease brush, you can see it's kind of creasing that in. If you hold down the Control key as you sculpt with the crease brush, it's going to pop it out. So I just want to do that for this form. So I'm just going to hold down the Control key, and I'm just going to go along here and just kind of pop out that form there. And then holding down the Shift key, I don't want to smooth out what I've just creased, so I'm going to go along the form and just kind of go along here and then smooth this out a bit more. Okay, there we go. Smooth out the top a little bit. I don't want it to be quite that sharp, so I think I'll just lightly smooth it out. All right, that is looking a lot better. I do want to play around with the shape a little bit more though. I kind of want to bring this down because it's a little bit rounded. So I'll press G for the grab brush, and then I can just kind of tap, zoom in here and just kind of tap, just kind of fix up the form or the shape of the nose, get it to how you like. So you can just kind of tap around, make it a little bit more of a triangle shape. I think that looks pretty good. And then if I look at it from side view, where the whole kind of muzzle or the front of the mouth comes out, you can see it's kind of slanted right here, and I want it to be a lot more flat. So this entire thing, I'm just going to zoom way out so I can kind of grab the whole thing, and I'm just going to tap and just kind of tap up and just kind of bring that up, and then I might go right in here, so right where the nose ends, like above the nose, right here. I think I'm just going to tap and just push that down a little bit more, just so that this right here is a bit flatter, so it kind of comes down, and then it's pretty flat. And you can also tap on the side, kind of pop that up. All right, that is looking a lot better. Let's press Ctrl S again to save. All right, I'm going to go back to the clay strips, and what I want to do now is kind of cut into the mouth, because right now the mouth doesn't really have any opening, and I want to like add a little tongue and some teeth. So I will just zoom right over here with the clay strips. I'm going to hold down the Control key, and I'm just going to start to go in there along the mouth. Okay, so going in there, just kind of pushing all that clay back in. And then something that I found really helps as well is when you want to push the clay in a lot, you can also use the draw brush instead of the crease brush. So this draw brush just seems to work really well. You can see if you just use it, start to push it back in, it really just helps to push things in pretty effectively. So that is great. And then I also just want to have a little bit of an opening here. To change my brush size, I can press F, and F will change the brush size. So I'm just going to make it a bit smaller and then tap to place that. And then I can hold down the Control key using the draw brush, and I can just start to go along here and just start to push that in. I'm basically just making that crease right in there. And then up here, along here, just pushing that all in, pushing that in there as well. And then I just want to connect this all. So I'm just going to push all this stuff in there, pushing that all back, kind of really opening up the mouth so that we have room for the tongue. And then also, if you want to hold down the Shift key and just kind of smooth out what you've done here, just to kind of smooth out the mouth a little bit, you can do that as well. And then I think I'll just smooth out this entire area here as well. So I'm just going to hold down the Shift key, just lightly go along here and smooth out those forms, kind of smooth out the bottom of the mouth and the chin. Smooth that all out. And then I do want to make just a very slight indent before the chin. So right here, I'm just going to hold down the Control key and just go in here with the crease brush, just kind of make that little dimple kind of thing. I don't want it to be that strong though, so I will hold down the Shift key and kind of go back and just kind of undo some of that. I want to be a little bit more subtle. Something like that is pretty good. Okay, so I need to make a crease right in here, and I also want to bring out this form a little bit. So I'm going to go back to the crease brush, and we can just crease this in. So I'm just going to start to crease right in there. Let's press Ctrl S to save again. Just crease that in, so we have that nice, strong crease right in there, right underneath the nose. You can also kind of crease it in right there to kind of connect the nose if you need to. Okay, so a nice strong crease right there. Kind of zoom out, take a look at it. I think I want to make the crease even stronger. So I'm going to go in, maybe make my brush a little bit bigger by pressing F to make my brush bigger. And then just creasing that in, very strong, kind of creasing that in there. All right, and then I want this to kind of pop out a little bit. So I'm going to hold down the Control key with the crease brush, and you can see that's kind of pinching the clay together and popping it out just a little bit. So I just want to pop this whole form out, pop that all out, and then just hold down the Shift key and just lightly smooth that out if you need to. Okay, and then hold down the Control key, kind of pop that out there. Okay, and then also right here, I want to pop that out a little bit. So I'm going to hold down the Control key, just go kind of back and forth. And then I want to actually bring it in here. So without holding the Control key, I'm just going to make a little crease there, just like that. You could even crease right in here as well. Okay, zoom out, take a look at it. I think that's a little bit too strong of a form, so I'm going to hold down the Shift key, just go along there and smooth that out a little bit. So I do want to just push that back a little bit more, just give more of an opening into the mouth. So I'm going to go back to the draw brush, and I'm just going to, again, hold down the Control key and really just go in there, try to push in more of that clay just to make the mouth a little bit bigger and more open. Just pushing that back. Okay, it's looking better. going in here, pushing that back in, smoothing that a little bit. Okay, and then I'm going to go to the grab brush. If I zoom out here and kind of look at it from the front, I just feel like the face is coming out a little bit too much. So right here, kind of on the side of the eyes, I'm just going to kind of tap, just kind of push that in, just tap like that. And also right here, I think I might tap a little bit, just pushing that in because I think it is a little bit too big. And then the cheeks, I think the cheeks are a little bit too low and a little bit too far out. So I'm going to tap and just push them back a little bit, and then also just kind of tap and push them up a little bit more because I really want to make it look like he's smiling, and that's kind of pushing his cheeks up. And also right here, this form, I think I might want to just tap this up a little bit, just bring it up a little bit more as well. You could also pull that smile up if you want to make him smiling more. So you can see that effect that I'm trying to get. That's too strong, of course, but you can see I'm trying to get that effect where his mouth is smiling and it's kind of pushing the cheek up. The cheeks, I think I want to make those cheeks just a little bit bigger. So I'm going to go to the clay strips brush and just kind of go along there, just popping out a bit more clay, bringing that out a little bit. And then you can just kind of go back and lightly smooth it out. And I think it would be a good time to work on the top of the eye sockets. So using the clay strips, I'm just going to go along there and kind of just define that a little bit better. And then we haven't really smoothed this out yet. So I will just go along here, lightly smooth that all out. All right, smooth that and smooth that a little bit. Just kind of pop out those forms there. And then I think I'll just make a little bit of a form here, almost like the skull. And I don't really know what that is, but I don't really like that. So I'm going to hold in the control key, push it in a little bit, and then just smooth that out. And then the top of the head here, we should smooth that out as well. So I'm just going to go along here, smoothing that out. Let's press Control S to save our project again. Okay, smoothing that out there. All right, so I think now would be a good time to make the neck. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to just kind of go down here to the bottom of the head, and I'm just going to start by going around in circles. Just going to go around in circles. Some people like to use the mask brush and just mask out where they want to add the neck and then kind of pull it out. I do that sometimes, but I find it's pretty easy just to start by going around in circles and just kind of popping that out. All right, so once that's kind of brought out a bit, I'm going to press G for the grab brush, kind of zoom in, and I will just kind of tug and pull the shape of that neck, bring it kind of back a little bit and a little bit forward. We also need to make it a bit thicker, playing around with that shape to get it how I like. All right, look around from different angles, the front and the side and the back. All right, I think that is good for now. So we can go back to the clay strips brush, and I can just go along here and kind of pop out those forms a bit. And I also just want to thicken up the neck. So I'm just going to add more clay to the neck, kind of thickening that up. Now I want this head, the back of the head, to kind of come down like this, like it is. And then I want to hold down the control key and just slightly go in right here, and then kind of come back out. So it's kind of a nice strong curve right there behind his neck. And then I will just smooth that out just a little bit. And then just go along the entire neck, all around the neck, and add more clay. Right here as well, that could use some more clay. Kind of thickening up some things. Like right here, that's a little bit thin on the side there. So I'm going to just go along there, adding more clay, and then hold down the Shift key, smooth that out. And then right here on the bottom, if you want to make that a little bit sharper, you could hold down the Control key and just try to flatten out some of it. Kind of go around in circles, flattening that out a bit, and then hold down the Shift key and just smooth that all out just so it's a bit flatter. And then I also am going to press G to go to the grab brush and just kind of tap and just pop that out a little bit, just to give the look of maybe some shoulders. And I do want to bring the front of it down a bit more. Maybe just bring it forward a little bit as well. And then on the sides here, I will just kind of tap and kind of push that up a little bit. If you want to sculpt the entire chipmunk's body, you can totally do that. I am just going to be sculpting his head. All right, let's just kind of look around, take a look. Okay, I think it just needs to be smoothed out a bit. So I'll press Shift for the smooth brush. And I'm actually going to go back to the clay strips and then hold down the Shift key for the smooth brush. Just go along there, smooth out a few little things. All right, let's take a look at that. Alright, I like how this is turning out. Let's press Ctrl S again to save. Now I am going to sculpt the ears on the back of the chipmunk's head. So let's go to the draw brush, and then I'm going to go kind of back over here, and I'm just going to start to go back and forth and just kind of pop it out. So I want the ears to be kind of both pointed a little bit away like that. So I'm just making this kind of going back and forth, kind of maybe going in circles as well. And then once we have some decently sized ears, if I just zoom in here, it's really rough right now. So if I just hold down the shift key and just lightly go over that, I can kind of smooth it out a bit. There we go. So now that I have just some basic ears, I can go to the grab brush, and I think I'll make my brush a little bit smaller by pressing F. And then I can just tap and just pull out the ears the rest of the way, just like that, pulling that up and kind of over to the side. I think those ears are a little bit too big, and I think I might want to push them up to the front a little bit more. So I'm just going to tap, kind of push them up to the front a little bit, and then I'll also just push them down and maybe a bit more forward because I don't want them to be quite that big. And I think they are a little bit close to each other as well. So I'm going to kind of tap and push them away from each other a little bit. So I'm just kind of zooming out, looking around, kind of seeing how the general shape is, and then I'm adjusting. So let's go back to the clay strips brush, kind of zoom into that ear, and we can start to really define that shape. So on the sides here, I'll just go around, and you can see we've got this problem, and I don't know why I turned this on at the beginning, but I think it's because I pressed Ctrl Z and so it turned it off. But I'm going to turn on the front faces only, and now that problem shouldn't happen anymore. So when I sculpt, it's only going to sculpt the front side of the faces, or the faces that are pointed at you. So we shouldn't have those issues in the back there. All right, so I'm going back and forth along the side of the ear, just kind of bringing that out a little bit. And then I want to make a form in here. What I want to do is kind of have it popping out the most right here, then have it coming up, and then I want to have it going in before it goes onto the head. So I will hold down the Control key and just go along here and just push that in a little bit. So we're basically getting this kind of shape. So it's sort of like a diamond shape, like that. That's kind of the shape that I want to go for. So holding down the Control key, just going in there, and then just smoothing that out, holding down the Shift key to smooth. So you can kind of start to see the shape that we're getting. I'm going to do that on the other side too. So right here, I will hold down the Control key, just kind of add clay or remove clay, just kind of add that shape in there, kind of that triangle shape, kind of cut that out. Okay, and then hold down the Shift key, smooth it out a little bit. And then you could also go to the draw brush and go along there, holding down the Control key, kind of pushing that in. The draw brush can really help just because it seems to be a bit stronger and works a little bit better for strong things like that. And then to really define that shape, now that we've gotten the main shape, we can go back to the grab brush by pressing G and just kind of tap and pull and kind of tug that around. So the top, I want to make that a bit more pointy, and then kind of here, pop that in a little bit, push that in. All right, there we go. Kind of look out. That is definitely the shape that I want. So let's just kind of fill this out and kind of smooth this out. So I'm going to the clay strips, just going along here, and then we can hold down the Shift key and smooth that all out because it is a bit rough right now. So we need to smooth all this out and just kind of smooth that all out. I don't mind if I'm just smoothing that out like crazy because I am gonna go back in here and cut inside the ears. We have some weird bumps right here, so I'm just gonna go along there holding down the Control key. If I need to cut back in or add more clay, go along there and then just hold down the Shift key and smooth that out a bit. And then I'm gonna go back to the grab brush and just do a little bit more tapping and just playing around with that shape. All right, take a look around. So that is the shape that I'm going for. That is really great. This might just be slightly too much coming out, so I could just tap that in just to make it a little bit more subtle. It almost looks like an arrowhead, you know? All right, so I'm gonna go to the clay strips, and then let's also press Ctrl S to save, and I want to cut into the ear. So I'm just gonna hold down the Control key, go in there, kind of go around there, maybe go up a little bit. Okay, and then just start to cut that back in and over. So we're just cutting that deep in where we want the ear to be. And again, you could also go to the grab brush if you'd like. Sometimes the grab brush works better. So I'm holding down the Control key to push that in. going along there. Yeah, I think the draw brush works pretty well in this case. And then holding down the shift key, smoothing that all out. I do want to smooth that out quite a bit because I do want it to be quite smooth, and making that a bit pointy. And then also holding down the control key and really making a solid form right there in the inner side of the ear, just to really show that form, you know, very stylized shape for that ear. So really just go back in there. You could also make your brush bigger and just go along the entire thing. Just kind of push it in. You don't want to push it too far back though that it's coming outside of the ear, of the back side, but just something like that is pretty good. And then if you need to smooth out anything, you can just lightly go back and smooth that out a little bit. Okay, let's take a look at this. It's getting there. I want to go to the grab brush though, and just kind of play around with the shape of this again. So I can just kind of tap this inner form now. Just kind of push that inner form around to kind of fit the shape of the ear a little bit better. So when I zoom out and just look around, I do think the ears are a little bit small. So I'm just going to, using the grab brush, kind of tap and just pull them out, just make them wider, and then just pull them up, make them a little bit bigger, just because I want the ears to be a little bit bigger, not way too big, maybe just a little bit bigger than that. You could also just tilt them or turn them just a little bit by tapping around. All right, that is looking much better. All right, so let's press Control S to save again. So I want to add in the actual eyes now. So what we're going to do is go back to the layout right here. And then I actually can just kind of push this away to give us a little bit more room. And also the timeline, I'm not going to be using the timeline. So I'm going to move my pen right here, click, and then drag up, and then drag down, and then let go to remove the timeline. So I want to add in the eyes now. So I'm going to press Shift C, and that'll make sure that this 3D cursor is in the center of the scene. So Shift C, then I will press Shift A, and I'm going to go to Mesh, and I'm going to add a UV sphere. And then right after I add the UV sphere, I'm going to tab into edit mode, and I can press S to scale, and G to grab, S to scale, and then let's go R to rotate, and then I will press X to rotate it on the X-axis, and then I want to rotate it over by 90 degrees, so I'll type in 90, and then enter to rotate it over by 90 degrees. I can then press G to grab and pull it back in there. So we're just pushing it into the eye socket. I still want the eye to be looking straight forward, but I can just press S to scale and G to grab and just kind of stick it in the eye socket. Let's add a mirror modifier so that it'll mirror to the other side. So right over here on the modifiers, I'm going to click on add modifier, and we can add the mirror modifier. All right, tab back into edit mode, and now you should be able to get a better idea of what this is looking like. So you can play around with this. So I think I'll just push these back into each other just a little bit, maybe just scale it down slightly. And you can play around with this later when we get more to the final thing. Let's just take a look at this. If you want to shade this object smooth, you can go Object and click on Shade Smooth, just so that you can kind of get a better idea of what that's looking like. Okay, let's look at it from side view. I think the eyes are kind of popping out a little bit too much. So I'm going to press G to grab, just push them back in a little bit. Let's look at that. You could even go back into the sculpting tab, just kind of look around. I think that is pretty good. That is good for now. So I'm back in the sculpting tab. Let me just go back into layout. I need to make sure I select the face object and then go into sculpting, and it'll bring me into the sculpt mode. And then when it does that, it turns the Dyn Topo off. So you're just going to need to click right up here and then click on OK, and that'll turn back on the Dyn Topo. Let's press Control S to save. So what I want to do now is just use the grab brush, and I can just kind of tap around and bring the eye socket more to around to fit the eye. So I will just kind of tap, push this out a little bit, bring this up, and then bring this over to the side a bit. And the bottom here, just kind of tap that and bring it up a little bit. Okay, something like that. That's looking good. Okay, that is really good. I like how that looks. Let's go back to the clay strips brush, and then I will just hold down the shift key and just smooth out anything that might still need to be smoothed out, because I do see like a couple things here, just a couple subtle things that could be smoothed out a little bit more, but we are almost done with the sculpting. Just make sure it's all good how you like. If you want to just make the cheeks slightly more puffy, you could do that, and then just make sure it's very smooth. I think right here, this needs to be smoothed out. So I'm going to hold down the shift key, just lightly smooth that out as well. All right, and I'm going to call that done for the sculpting. So let's just press Control S again, and then I will go back to the layout. All right, so now what we're going to be doing is we're going to be modeling the teeth and the tongue. So I'm just going to press Shift C again to just make sure the 3D cursor is in the center there. And then I'll press Shift A, and I'm going to add a cube. Let's tab into edit mode as soon as we add it. And I'm going to press S and just scale it down. And then I can press G to grab, and I'll just kind of bring it over. And then G to grab, bring it over, and S to scale, and we'll just kind of scale that down. Just kind of put it right down here. Now I don't want the teeth to be this thick, so I'll press S to scale, and then I'll press Y on the Y axis, and we'll just push that in just so that it's not quite that long. And then I will also press S and Z, just kind of make it a bit longer because I do want it longer up and down. And then I can press G to grab, just kind of stick it into place, scale it down a little bit more. All right, and then I need to add a mirror because I want to mirror it over, so there's 2 of them. So right here on the modifiers, I'm going to click on Add Modifier, and then we're going to add the Mirror Modifier. Let's now press R to rotate, G to grab, and I think I want to rotate them so that they're kind of moving away from each other, kind of bring them up, something like that. Let's also scale it down a little bit more, and then I will press 3 or just click right up here, and that's going to go to the face select. Then I can just select this face and press G to grab and S to scale and just kind of bring it down a little bit, something like that. Let's take a look at that. That's pretty good. I think I want the entire thing to be a bit bigger though. So I'll press S to scale, just kind of scale that up, and also maybe R to rotate, just kind of rotate it slightly. Let's take a look. Okay, that's pretty good. I'll tab back into edit mode, and I want to smooth out the edges a bit. So to smooth out the edges, a really easy way I can do this is just add a bevel. So to add a bevel, I'm going to press Control B. So Control B, it's going to add this bevel as we drag out, and then I'm going to scroll with my mouse wheel and just scroll up just to make a few more loops there, and then just click to place that. And now if I tab back into object mode, you can see the edges are just a bit smooth. And then also I can go object and just click on shade smooth to smooth that object out. All right, so now let's go ahead and model the tongue. So again, I'm going to press Shift C to make sure the 3D cursor's in the center, and then I'll press Shift A, and I want to go to Mesh, and I want to add a cube. I'm going to tab into edit mode, and then I want to press S to scale, and Z on the Z axis, we'll just scale that down, and then S to scale, and let's do X on the X axis and just scale that down as well. And then S and Z, scale that down a little bit more. All right, so we have this box here. Let's just press G to grab, and Y on the Y axis, we'll pull it over, and then we want to bring it down into the mouth. So I'll press G to grab, Z on the Z axis, we'll just bring it down and then scale it down. Okay, I can press period on the number pad, and that's going to hop to our selection. S to scale it down a little bit more, bring it forward a little bit. Okay, and then I'm going to add the subdivision surface modifier to smooth it out. So I'm going to press Control 2, and that's going to add the subdivision surface. Now it's way too smooth right now, so what I need to do is press Control R to add some loop cuts to sharpen it up. So I'm going to click right here, drag out, and then click to place that so it's a bit sharper. And then I'll also press Control R and then left click and right click so there's one in the center. Now this one, I want to pull it out a little bit just to make the shape of the tongue a little bit better. So I'll press G to grab, and Y on the Y axis, just kind of pull it forward a little bit like that. And then we can also go object and just shade this object smooth. All right, so that is our basic tongue. Now I want the tongue to be kind of rotated up a little bit, so I'll tab into edit mode, just select everything, and then we can press R to rotate, X on the X axis, and just kind of bring it down a little bit, and then just bring it back up. So R to rotate, X on the X axis, just get it to the angle that you like, and then just move it up a little bit. Okay, that is good, although I don't think I want it to be quite that much out. I don't want his tongue to be coming that much out. Kind of looks like he's going, bleh. So I'm going to tab into edit mode, press G to grab, R to rotate, just bring it back in his mouth a little bit more so it looks a bit more natural. All right, let's press Control S to save this again. Okay, so now what we can do is we can set up some basic materials, and then we'll do the UV unwrapping and the texture painting. So let's just set up basic materials for everything. So I'm going to just select the main object, and then I'll go right here to the materials. I'm going to click on New to add a new material, and I can just name it Chipmunk. There we go, Chipmunk. And then let's also press Z and move your mouse down, or for me, it's my pen. And we'll just press Z, move your mouse down, and go into the material preview. And then let me just bring this out. The base color for the time being, I'm just going to kind of make it like a orangey kind of color just for the time being, but we will be doing the texture painting pretty soon. All right, that is good. Let's press Control S to save again. And then let's do some basic materials for these objects. I'm just going to select the teeth. We'll click on New. We can call this material Teeth. Now for this one, I just want to make it fully white, so they're very white teeth. But then the roughness, I want to turn this roughness value way down to like a 0.1 so that it's very, very shiny. So the teeth are kind of look reflective. All right, that is good for the teeth material. Let's select the tongue. We're going to click on New. We can just call this Tongue. And then for this tongue material, the base color, I'm going to turn this to like a bright reddish pink. I don't want it to be super saturated. I don't want it to be super pink or super red, just kind of in the middle, somewhere around there. And you can of course change that later if you'd like to. But for now, something like that looks pretty good. All right, so let's go ahead and do the eye materials. So I'm going to click on the eye. We're going to click on New. We can just call this Eye White. We are going to be having 3 different materials. So the first one is going to be Eye White. And for this one, the base color, I'm going to turn that all the way up to fully white. And then the roughness, I'm going to turn that all the way to 0 so that it's very shiny, kind of will make the eyes look wet. Now we need to add 3 different materials. One material is the eyes white. The other ones are going to be the black pupils, and then the other ones are going to be the color in the eye. So to add another material within this object, I'm going to click on the plus right here, and then we can click on New. Now this one, I'm going to call this Eye Color. Now again, the roughness, I want to turn this to all the way to 0 so it's very shiny. And then the base color, for the time being, I'm just going to kind of make it like an orangey, maybe a brownish. Something like that, just for the time being. And then you can see it's not anywhere. That's because we need to actually assign the eye color onto the different parts on the eye where we want it. So I'm going to tab into edit mode, and then I can just press 3 or click right here to the face select. Now what I'm going to do is hold down the Alt key and click on this loop of vertices. So it's going to select that ring. And then now that we have that selected, make sure the eye color is selected and we can click on Assign. And now you can see that it's going to assign that color to that part of the object. So then we need to do that one more time for the pupil in the middle. So I'm going to click on the plus here, click on New. This one I'm going to call Eye Black, or you can call it Pupil, whatever you want to do. And then the base color, I'm going to make this all the way to black. And then again, right down here on the roughness, turn the roughness to 0 so that it's very shiny. So if we tab into edit mode, what I'm going to do is just press A to deselect, and then I'll press B for the box select and just drag right here. And that's going to select all of those faces. And then just make sure the eye black is selected and click on Assign. So there we go. Now we're really starting to get some expression because we added those eyes. That is looking really good. Let's press Control S to save. And then if you want to change the size of the pupil, you can do that. So again, with this selected, you can just press S to scale. Make it a little bit bigger if you want. Tab back into object mode, take a look. So it really changes the expression. So you can kind of look at that other eye and just kind of change it to the size that you want. That kind of looks cute, a little bit cute. That looks a little bit weird. I think something like that looks pretty good. Maybe just make it a little bit smaller so you can just scale those faces. Yeah, I think something like that looks pretty good. Okay, I'm going to press Control S to save again. All right, so we are ready to set up this model for the texture painting. So I am actually not going to be retopologizing this model just because we're not really going to be animating this or anything. So I'm just going to be using a quick and dirty method to UV unwrap a sculpt for texture painting. So this technically isn't the proper way to do it, and especially if you want to use this character like in a game or an animation or something like like that, then you should definitely retopologize this object before you go ahead and texture paint it. But as I said, I'm not really going to be doing animation or rigging or using it for a game or anything like that. I'm just going for the final render. So I'm going to be using a UV unwrapping technique so that I don't have to retopologize the model. But definitely, if you want to learn how to do retopology, there are a bunch of tutorials online of how to do retopology in Blender. So if you want to retopologize it, then probably just pause the video and go retopologize your sculpt. But I will show you now how I'm going to do it instead. So I'm just going to select this object, and then I'm going to go right over here to the modifiers. I'm going to click on Add Modifier, and I'm going to add a Decimate. So what this Decimate modifier will do is it will make this way less dense, but still keep the shape of the model. So you can see here, this is a very, very dense mesh because it's a sculpt. But if I just go back into object mode, the ratio here, if I turn this down to like a 0.1 and then click on enter, it's going to take a little bit to load up because it's kind of like doing the math and taking away the geometry, but it's still keeping the shape of the sculpt. So now you can see here, if you tab into edit mode, it's not going to show it, but you can see right here how much less topology there is. So there's way less topology, but it looks exactly the same. So if I just click right here and then click on apply to apply the Decimate modifier, we'll just wait for that to apply, just takes a moment. Now if I tab into edit mode, you can see that it pretty much looks exactly the same, but there's way less topology. And that's going to be super helpful for this method of UV unwrapping. So I want to shade this object smooth again, and you can see that there's hardly any difference. You really can't tell that it's now a much lower poly model. So now what we can do is we can UV unwrap this. So I'm just going to make sure it's selected, and I'm going to go right over here to the UV editing tab. I'm now going to select everything. So we are in the UV editing layout. So here's the UV editing, and then here's our object. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press U once I've selected everything. And then instead of just clicking on the unwrap, I'm going to use the Smart UV project. So I'm going to click on that. And then what we need to do is we need to give in a little bit of an island margin. Basically what that's going to do is going to give a little bit of space in between the different UV islands. And I'll show you that in a moment. So the island margin, I'm going to just turn this to like a 0.01. Enter. It doesn't need to be very much space, just a tiny little bit of space, and then I will click on OK. So you can see what it's done is it's broken up this object into these different islands here, and it's flattened it out. And so this is our UV layout. But you can see because I told it to give a little bit of space, it's giving it a little space all around here, just a little bit of space in between all the islands. Now the problem with this is when you start to sculpt, there might be some overlap, and if there's going to be overlap, then you're going to get some weird errors when you are doing the texture painting. So we need to make sure there is no overlap in this UV layout. To do that, I'm going to press A and just make sure everything is deselected. And then I'm going to click right up here on select, and I'm going to click on select overlap. So it looks like there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's actually not too bad. And it's actually pretty easy to fix these. So I'm just going to zoom into one of them, and then I can start to fix this. So something that I can try at the beginning right here is I can just press G to grab and kind of click to bring that over. And then I just want to deselect this. So I can just press B for the box select, and then I'm going to middle click and drag and let go, and that'll just deselect it. And then I can press G to grab again, click right there, and then I want to deselect this. So I'll press B for the box select, and then again, middle click, drag over, and that'll deselect it. And then I'll press G to grab, put this one up here, and then again, B for the box select, middle click, and that'll just deselect that. And then we just have one more up here. So I'm going to press G to grab. Maybe I'll just stick it right there in the middle, and then press A to deselect. Now, if I zoom into them, you can see that there probably is still going to be some overlap. Let's just go right here and click on select, and then just click on select overlap. And you can see that, yeah, it did select it. So basically what we need to do is just select some of these points and just kind of fix them, just kind of drag them around. Try not to drag them too far because we don't want there to be a lot of stretching in the UV layout. But if you just drag these like that, just to fix that, all right, that one's fixed. Let's do it again, select overlap. And you can see there was just a little issue here. So we can just drag that out. A to deselect everything, make sure everything is deselected, and then click on select and select overlap. And you can see it still selected those pieces because there was just some overlapping here. Now this one, it looks like there's just two little pieces. So what I can do is I can just select the entire piece and move it out of the way. So I'll just hover my mouse over the one piece and then press L. That's going to select all of the linked vertices, and then I can just press G to grab, move it over, and click to place that. All right, A to deselect this, and then let's go select overlap. You can see it just selected this one here. Again, this one is really easy. We can just click and drag, and then you can see there's a separate piece right there. So with my mouse hovered over that piece, I'll press L, and that's going to select all the parts that are linked together. And then I'll press G to grab, just click to place that. All right, and then I'll go over to this one. And again, let's press L and then G to grab. Oop, I pressed the wrong button. G to grab, put it over there. All right, and now let's go select overlap. And it just selected this one piece right here. So all we need to do is just select this vertice, press G to grab. I think that was it. Let's do this one more time. Select overlap. And it did not select anything. So now we don't have any overlap in our UV layout. So again, remember, this is just a quick and dirty method. Technically, it isn't the proper way to do it, but I really don't care much for doing retopology. It does take a lot of time, and I'm not going to be doing any animation or using this for a game or anything like that. So now that that has a decent UV map, we can do the texture painting. So I need to go right over here to the shading tab, and then what I need to do is I need to actually add in an image texture, and then we'll use that for the texture painting. So I'm going to press Shift A right here on the nodes, and I'm going to search for an image texture. I'm just going to drop the image texture right here, and then what I want to do is plug the color up to the base color. Now we need to actually make an image texture that we can texture paint on, so I'm going to click on New right here. Now the width and height, right now this is set to a 1K texture. I want to change it to a 4K texture. So what I'm going to do is click, drag down, and then let go, and that'll allow us to change both of the values at the same time. Now I'm going to let Blender do the math for me. Because I know this is a 1K texture, I want to make it a 4K texture. I just find that 4K textures work pretty well. They're pretty high quality. So I'm going to click on the little star. Now the star there, it's on my numpad, and I think it's also on the 8. On my keyboard, it's also on the 8. So click on the star, and then I'm going to click on 4. What this is telling Blender is going to tell it this number, the 1024, we're going to times that number by 4. So just click on enter, and then Blender has done the math for us, and the result is 4096 pixels by 4096 pixels. And that is the resolution of a 4K texture. And then what I can do is just call this Chipmunk color, enter that, and then the last thing that we need to do is just make a base color. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make this kind of a bright color, and then I'll make it sort of like a tannish, kind of orangish, kind of pinkish, something like that. If you want to use the same exact color that I'm using, I'm going to use, if you click right over here on the hex value, you could type in FFAE73. That's the color that I'm going to be using. That is the hex value, kind of just like a tannish, orangish, pinkish kind of color. And then that is it. So I can just click on OK, and now it's created that chipmunk color. So now that we've put that in, we can actually do the texture painting. So just make sure that object is still selected, and we can click right over here on the texture painting tab. So now if I zoom in here, you can see it already has the layout for us. So it has the UV map right here, and then it already gave us a color and a brush. So if I just start to paint, you can see, there we go. And then this is going to be mirrored over to the other side because it's symmetrical. So if for some reason it's not mirroring for you, you can just drag over until you see this little thing and turn on the X symmetry, and then it's just going to mirror your texture painting. Now the color, if I just click and drag back over here to this color, I want to make this kind of like a dark brown color, pretty saturated, but pretty dark as well. And if you'd like to use the exact same color that I'm using, I am going to be using a hex value of 5E2D13. So there we go, just that nice dark brown color. So now what I can do is I can just start to paint in the chipmunk. So the strength is turned all the way up to 1, and I like that. I do want it to be really strong right now. So I'm just going to start by just painting along there. All right. Just make that pretty strong. And then kind of on the edges, I can hold my brush a little softer so that it's a little bit soft, but then right in here, I'm going to make it very strong. So I'm just going to go along here, go all the way over to the nose, and then kind of on the side, just holding my brush a little bit looser, just not pushing down quite as hard, so it's a little bit smoother. All right, just like that. And it's okay if it goes on the nose a little bit because we will be painting over on the nose. So I'm just making that like secondary color. kind of that brown color. Let's do the entire face, or the entire head. So I'm going to go along there. I'm also going to go around the top of the eyes, kind of on the forehead. Okay, just paint that all in. And then I will go down and then over to the side. So of course you can paint this however you like. You can do whatever colors you want. I'm just going to paint it like this. So I'm going to go down and over to the side because I don't want the chipmunk's cheek to be the darker color. I want it to be the lighter color. Now, something that is very important with texture painting is if you close your Blender file without saving the texture map, then it's going to lose that data and you're going to have to retexture paint it. So if you close the Blender file, make sure you've saved your image first. We will save this image as soon as we're done texture painting. And just as a backup, we could save it while we're texture painting. Let's keep on going with this though. So I'm going to fill all this in. So all this back area here and the top, I'm going to fill this all in. And for the time being, I'm also just going to fill in the ears with this darker color too. And then inside the ears, we can just make that lighter color. And if you wanted to, you could press Z and move your mouse down to go into the material preview. And then that way it'll look a little bit different. It kind of shows some shading. If you like that better, you could change it to that mode while you're texture painting. Okay, so painting that all in. So now the ears are all brown, except it looks like I missed a couple areas. All right, that is good. Let's keep going. So all this back area, I all want this to be the darker brown as well, just till it kind of gets to the bottom of the bust, just like that. And then we will have this go over, and then we will have this go down, and then we can just connect it. So down there, and all this in here, this is all gonna be that brown color. Now, if for some reason Blender crashed right now, we would lose the texture paint. We'd have to redo that. So let me just save this right now. And then as we keep on texture painting, we can override it. So you can click right up here on image and you can actually see it has a little star there. That's telling you that it's not saved. So just click on image and then you can click on save as. And then I'm just gonna save this with my other files as Chipmunk color, and I'll just save that as a PNG and I'll just click on save as. So it's basically saved this image. Now the image won't have these little gray lines. That's just because we are previewing it in the texture painting. But underneath that, all that color there, it'll save that as a texture map. So let's keep going, and then we can also resave it again. So you can see now that I've started to paint again, it's telling me that it's not saved because it's kind of updated. So after a little while, we can just save a backup of it again and just kind of override the texture. All right, so let's keep going. Pretty much like all the back here, I want this to all be brown. And then just around there, brown as well. Take a look at that, okay. And then right here, I want this to kind of just go around and then down. So we'll fill that all in. And if you want to change the brush size, it's F. So press F to change your brush size. That'll make your brush bigger or smaller, just like in sculpting. It's the same shortcut key for changing your brush size. I do want to make this part a little bit smaller, but then kind of like his belly, I do want that to be like the lighter color. So we're just going to go along here, just kind of make his shoulders the darker color, but then make sure his cheek stays the lighter color. All right. Going along there, just kind of sharpening that up. Okay, let's just take a look at this. Now, if you zoom out and you see those little weird lines right there, I have no idea why that happens. It probably has something to do with our weird UV unwrap, but when I render it out, you can't see it. I don't know what it is, but you can't see it in the render, so that's totally fine. All right, let's keep going. I think I just want to make this a little bit smaller. I think I do want to make this brown color a little bit more out. You could also turn on the strength of your brush and then just go along here and just make it a little bit more brown. Kind of have a smoother transition between the light brown and the dark brown. If you wanted to, you could do that. That is looking pretty good. Maybe just add a little bit more brown on the top here. So the cheeks, I want to make that a little bit more pink. So right here, this brown color, I can click on this and I'm going to make this kind of a bright pinkish color. Something like that. And then the strength of my brush, I'm going to make it very, very small strength. And then I'll press F to make my brush a little bit bigger. So it's very subtle. And then what I'm going to do is just kind of tap, lightly tap. It might be better to see it in the other view. Let's just lightly tap. We're just going to add a subtle kind of pink color around the cheeks. I just think it kind of helps. I like the look of that, just making a very subtle pink color. It's hard to see, but it does add quite a bit to the character. Now I also want to make inside the mouth, I want to make that darker. So let's make this like a really dark brown color. And then I will also turn the strength up a little bit. And then what I can do is I can just go in here and start to make that quite a bit darker. So all inside here, we're going to make that all darker. I find that it really helps just to kind of make the mouth look like it's going in more. Kind of makes it look like it's kind of deeper in. Okay, make that all dark. And then I'll just make my brush really, really small. Pressing F to make my brush smaller. And I'm just going to make it a bit darker right in there. Kind of like a cavity. Kind of just making, it's almost like an ambient occlusion look where like the cavities or the parts that are dipping in are a bit darker. And maybe around here as well. All right, there we go. That is looking great. All right, so let's texture paint the nose. So the nose, I want it to be just very, very subtle brown, but then it's mostly going to be gray. So pretty gray, and then I'm going to make it very dark. So it's going to be almost fully black. We can just start to go along there. I do need to make my brush strength all the way back to 1 because I want it to be very dark. And then we'll just go along the nose. Just kind of darken that up. I want all of the nose to be quite dark. Okay, darkening that up. When I was looking at reference images, some cartoon squirrels or some like stylized chipmunks, they had like maybe pink noses or orangey noses or brighter noses. So if you want to do that, you could try playing around with that. Changing the color. I think a black nose or a dark colored nose looks good. But you could also make it like a bright red or a bright pink or something like that if you'd like to. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, there we go. I really like how that looks. Maybe just going around here just a little bit. Okay, making that slightly darker. If you wanted to, you could just add a tiny, tiny little subtle thing right here. If I make this darker, you could just add a subtle darkness just to kind of make that kind of an ambient occlusion effect, just to make it look a little bit darker, like it's creasing in a little bit more. All right, that is looking really good. Now I want to add some little dots on the chipmunk, like kind of like where the whiskers are. So to do that, I'm going to make this a gray color. So to make it a gray color, I'm going to click on the RGB and then drag these all out to 1. And that way it's just going to be fully white, and then I can just drag it down to make it a gray color. Now I can press F to make my brush really small, and then also just change the strength to maybe kind of like halfway. And I'm just going to go in here and just kind of tap. Some of them maybe can be a bit lighter, some of them can be a bit darker. So just tap, change the strength of your brush by just tapping a little bit harder or a little bit softer. And yeah, we're basically just giving that little look. And then we are also going to be modeling just some simple whiskers. I forgot to model that, but we will be adding that in as well. Nothing too fancy, pretty easy to do. All right, so we are almost done with the texture painting. I do just want to save this again. So let's just click on Image, and then click on Save As. And then you can see we already saved the chipmunk color. It's going to override it. You can see it's red here telling us that it's going to override the file, but we want that. So just click on Save As, and then it'll just override that file for our new texture painted map. So we are almost done. The last thing that I want to do is just kind of add like a pinkness inside the ear. So let's click on the color. We're going to make it kind of a brightish, kind of pinkish, tannish color, something like that. Let's press F to make our brush bigger. And then I will turn the strength all the way to 1, so it's very strong. Let's just go in here now, maybe make it a little bit brighter even. And we're just going to kind of make that pinkish inside the ear there. So just go all around. All right, fill that all in. Looking good. All right, there we go. And then I think right in the middle, I do want to make it just a little bit lighter. So I'll just make it a little bit more towards the white and then make my brush really subtle and just kind of go in there. Just make it a little bit more light colored. See how that's looking. Maybe make it even brighter. There we go. There we go. That's what I was kind of looking for. Okay, so we are done with the texture painting. Let's just save this again. So I'm going to go Image and then just click on Save As. And then we can just override that chipmunk color. Just click on Save As Image. Make sure you always do that. Because if you don't save your texture paint, then Blender is not going to save it in the Blender file. So you need to save it externally to somewhere on your computer. All right, so let's go back over to the layout here and just take a look at that. That is looking pretty cute. So now what we need to do is we need to texture paint 2 more things. We need to texture paint the color in the eye, and then we also need to texture paint the pupil. And then we will just be adding those little whiskers. Let's actually just add the whiskers right now. I think that'd be pretty cool just to add the whiskers right here. So I'm going to press Shift C again to make sure the 3D cursor is in the very center, and then I'll press Shift A. And to make the whiskers, I'm just going to start with a cube. So I'll add a cube. I'll tab into edit mode, and I can just scale it way down. G to grab, kind of move it over, scale it way down. And I just want to have 3 whiskers. So I'll just move this little cube way down in here and kind of stick it right in there where the whiskers would be. Something like that, okay? Now I can click right up here to go to the face select and just select this face. And then I will press E to extrude, R to rotate, and G to grab, E to extrude again, and just kind of rotate that over, something like that. E to extrude again, just kind of make a little part. Let's select everything and just maybe scale it down a little bit and kind of rotate it over because I don't want it to be coming out quite that much. Something like that. All right, and then to smooth this out, you can press Ctrl 2 or just add the subsurf modifier. And you can see now that is looking really good. Let's also shade this object smooth. Now I just want to have 3 of them. So I'm going to tab back into edit mode, and then I will press Shift D to duplicate, and then R to rotate. Just kind of make it going a slightly different angle. You can also double tap R and that'll do like this trackball rotation. Just kind of move it around a little bit, make it look a little bit different. And then Shift D again to duplicate that. Just kind of rotate it around. All right, so to see it better, to see how it's gonna look better, I'm also gonna click on Add Modifier and add a Mirror Modifier. And that should mirror it over to the other side because the origin point is in the very center. Now, if for some reason that origin point was not in the center, the mirror might be off. It may not be in the center. So what you can do is click on the mirror object and then click on the icosphere, which is this character. And now you can see that it's going to mirror it around that character. So now I can just kind of move this around, just maybe scale it, get it how you like, okay? And then let's click on it and we will make a material, just a basic material for the whiskers. So right here, I'm gonna click on new. I'm just gonna call this whiskers, and then I'll just make it kind of like a dark brown color. Something like that, and probably a little bit shiny. So the roughness value right here, I can just turn the roughness down to make it a bit shiny. Let's take a look at that. Yeah, I do like how that's looking. All right, I'm just gonna leave it like that. I like how those whiskers are. You could maybe move them a little bit closer to the nose if you wanted to, but I like how that is. All right, so now we need to do the texture painting for the eyes. So we need to first UV unwrap the eyes. So I'm gonna click on it. Just click on the eyes and then we will tab into edit mode. Now I'm going to press 1 and that's going to go to the front view, and then I can double tap A to select the entire eye. So now I'm looking right at the eye, straight on. I'm going to press U and I am just going to, instead of unwrapping this Smart UV project or anything like that, I'm going to do project from view, and that way it's just going to unwrap it from our view. So now we've unwrapped it. If we go to the UV editing, you can see there it is, just like a flat eye. So now what we can do is we can go right over here to the shading tab, and here is the shader nodes. Let's click right down here to go to the material preview, and first I want to paint the eye color. So I'm going to click on the eye color. And then again, I need to add in an image texture so that we can paint the eye. So I'm going to press Shift A and I'm going to search right here for an image texture. Just like we did before, we're going to drop the image texture right here, and then we can plug the color up to the base color. Now I need to make a color for the eye, so I'm going to click on new right here, and then I can just call this eye texture, enter, and then the width and height, we really don't need it to be a 4K texture because that's pretty big. So I'm going to click on this and then drag down and let go. I just want it to be a 1K texture because we don't need it to be that big because it's not very big on the character. So I'm going to change this to 1024, so 1024, and then click on enter. So now the width and height is both 1024 by 1024. Now the color, this is going to be the eye color. So I'm just going to kind of scale this down, kind of move it over. And I just want to make it kind of like a, I don't know, whatever a chipmunk would have, kind of like maybe orangey or kind of brown eyes, maybe like a hazel color, probably a bit more saturated, something like that. And then click on OK. All right, so now we have that plugged up. Let's go right back over here to our UV editing real quick before we continue. So here is the UV mapping for our eye. Now you can see that it's kind of small right now. So I want to press A to select it, and then I'll press S to scale it up. And I'm just going to scale it up a bit, just like that, and then just press G to grab, and I'm going to put it into the center. And that way we're getting the most amount of detail that we can. We're not really missing out on any of the like size of the texture, because if it was really small, then it would look really pixelated. So we just want to scale it up as big as we can. So now from here, we can go right over to the texture painting. And if you start to texture paint on that, you can see that it is texture painting the eye So this isn't too hard to do, it's pretty simple. What I want to do is I want to click on the color and make it all the way black. And then I can also turn the strength down quite a bit. And then I will also press F to make my brush bigger. Basically what I want to do is kind of the edges, I just want to make it a little bit darker. So I'm just going to go along here. And let's go over here just so we can see this. Don't worry if the rest of the eye is pink, that's okay, because it won't do that in the final render. So you can see I'm just going along here, just going around the edge and just lightly tapping, and it's going to make the edge darker. The same thing for the inside, so I'm just going to kind of go in circular motions, just make that a little bit darker. All right, that is good. Now the top here, I want to make this a little bit of a lighter brown. So I'm going to make this quite bright, kind of like a bright orangey color. Something like that, maybe a little bit more brown. All right, and then I'm just going to go along here and just go along the top. And I'm just going to make that a bit lighter colored. Let's make it even brighter, much more light. And just go along there. Maybe if we go back out here, we can't really see the reflection. Just kind of go along there. So you can see what we're doing. We're kind of making that like white bit. It kind of makes it look stylized, and I do like that look. So let's just go along there. Okay, now that does look good, but it's kind of taken away from that black. So I'm going to go back to the black color, make my brush kind of small, and just go along here and just put that black in, kind of make it more subtle, make it a bit smaller, but I do want to add that black back in. We probably should have done the lighter first, but that is okay. All right, so there we go. That's really it. I don't want to do anything too complicated. Now what we can do for the black part of the eye is we can actually use the same image texture. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the shading tab, and then I'm going to click right over here in the material slots. I can click on the eyes black. So what I can do now is I can add in the same image texture. So I'm going to press Shift A, and I'm going to search for an image texture. We'll just click on this and drop it down here. And then in the drop down, I'm going to click on the eye texture, and then we can plug the color up to the base color. So now it's using the same image texture, so we can use the same image texture to paint the eye black. So now let's go back to texture painting, and you can see that because this black part of the eye, it's in a different part of the UV map. But you can see if I start to paint this, because it's using the same texture map, it's going to paint the black on the color as well as the pupil. And I don't want this, I only want to paint the pupil. So what we need to do is we need to move the pupil over here. We need to move the UV editing of the pupil over to a separate area, and then we can just paint it in black. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go right over here to UV editing, and I'm just going to deselect everything with A, and then I'll press B, and I'm just going to box select just the pupil. And you can see that there it is, it's just selected. I can press G to grab and just like stick it over here. You could even scale it up if you wanted so that it has more detail. Just something like that is totally fine, just that it's not overlapping on that. So now what I can do is I can go back to the texture painting, and you can see we have the same problem if I start to paint right there. But what we can do is we can actually just paint on this flat image texture. So if I just start to paint around here, you can see there we go. So now it's painting just that pupil in there. So just go along there, just paint that in. All right, and then I just want to make a little bit of a highlight to make the eyes look like they're alive and kind of popping out. So what I'm going to do is turn this to a white color, and then you could either paint right here or you could paint on the eye. Because it's easy enough, I'm just going to paint on the eye, but you can see it's the same thing. So if you want to paint over here, you can do that either way. So with this white color, I'm just going to go along here and just paint this little highlight on the top of the eye just to make it look like it's reflecting some light, and that'll make the character look more alive, and it just really gives life to the character. So there we go, something like that. I do want to change the shape of it a little bit, so I think I'll change it back to black, and then I can just go along here, just kind of play with the shape of that. Something like that, just kind of get it to the shape that you like. Okay, I think that is still a little bit too big of a highlight, so I'm going to bring it down, make it a little bit smaller, maybe make the edges a little bit smoother, make that highlight a little bit smaller. So there we go, I like that, that is looking really great. Okay, so then remember, we need to save this image, because if we don't save it, then Blender's not going to keep it in the file and we're going to lose it. So just right here, click on Image, and then just click on Save As. And then I'm just going to save it with all my other files as iTexture, and we'll just save that. All right, just press Control S again to save your project. So let's go back to the layout here and check it out. Check out our character. That is super cool. So now we can pose it and we can light it and just do some rendering and a bit of compositing. So I'm not going to be using my drawing tablet anymore because we're done with sculpting and texture painting. So I'm going to bring this over to my main monitor and we'll just finish this up. So first, let's set up the lighting. Now I'm going to be using an HDRI to get some realistic lighting because HDRIs are super helpful. So if you want to download the same HDRI that I'm going to be using, I will leave the link in the video description. It's an HDRI from HDRI Haven. So to add it in, I'm going to click right here on this little yellow thing right here, over here on the world, just click on this, and then we need to click on environment texture. Then we can just click on open to open up the HDRI. And then I'm going to be using the Artist Workshop 1K HDRI. So again, I'll leave a link in the description if you'd like to use the same HDRI that I'm using. I just really like how this lighting is. So I would just click on it and then just click on open image. All right. Now, if we go into rendered mode, you can see how this is looking. Now, I am going to be rendering this with Cycles Render because it is more realistic. I just really like Cycles Render. You could render it with Eevee though. It looks actually pretty much the same, especially because this is a stylized character. It does look pretty much the same, so you could totally render it with Eevee. I am still just going to use Cycles because I like Cycles better. All right, so that is looking really great. I already really like the lighting. Let's add a camera now. So I'm going to press Shift A and I'm going to go right down here to the camera. And then to hop the camera to our view, we can just press Control Alt Numpad 0. So you can see that our camera has now snapped to where we are. And then let's also change it to like a square because I don't really want to be like this. Let's go right over here to the render properties or the output properties. So right here, the resolution, you can change it to whatever you want. I'm just going to change them both to 1920 by 1920. That is good. So now it's a square image. And then something that I want to do, this is totally personal preference. I like to change the focal length of the camera. So if you select the camera and then click on the camera settings, you can see here's the focal length. Now right now it's set to 50. I think that something like a 80 works actually a lot better for this sculpt. I think it just makes the sculpt look better. You can totally change it or play around with it. But yeah, if you want to do that, I'm going to change it to 80. Now to move the camera around, I'm going to press G to grab, and then I can also press G and then double tap Z, and that's going to move it in or out. And then I can also just press like R and Z to rotate that over and just kind of get it how I like. And then we are going to be doing a little bit of posing just to make this look really nice. We are going to be posing the character as well. Let's go into rendered mode, see how this is looking. Now we don't really need Blender to render this all for us. So I'm going to, in the camera view, just press Control B and then drag over and let go. And then that'll set a boundary around the camera. So it's only going to render what is in the camera view. All right, so that is looking pretty good. I do want to add like a rim light behind the character. So if you're using Blender Eevee, then if you press Shift A, you can just add like one of these lights here. I would probably add an area light. Because I'm using Cycles Render, I like to use the plane lights. So I'm going to press Shift A and I just add a plane. But again, if you're using Eevee, just use right over here, just use an area light. I'm going to rotate this and bring it over. I'll just kind of rotate that over and then I'm going to scale it up on the Z axis just so that it's like this big plain light. And I think these lights work really well for a rim light. So now if I go into rendered mode, it's not doing anything. That's because we need to add an emission material to it. So it's emitting light. So if I click right over here on the materials, I can click on new. And then right now the surface, the default is set to principled. I want to change this to an emission. So it's emitting light. And then the strength, I can turn that way up and you can see now it's kind of adding that rim light back there. So I think I'll just scale it up a little bit more, kind of stick it kind of behind the character. So now when you light that up, you can see we've got this nice rim light here. Maybe I'll change the strength to something like a 10. I think I might turn it up actually a little bit more to something like a 20 maybe, just that we have a nice rim light right there. Okay, now the background, I actually want that to be transparent so that we can just add in like a blue color in the background. So right over here on the output properties, actually I think it's right over here on the render properties, I always get that mixed up. Over on the render properties, you can click right over here on the film and then just click on transparent. And there we go. Now the background is transparent. Now, one really important thing that I want to do to really give this character more expression is to actually change the symmetry. Because right now he's just like looking right at you, and he doesn't really have much of a different expression like on either side, like his eyebrows could be moved and things like that. So this is pretty easy to do. I'm just going to click right here, just click on the character, and then I'm just going to go back over to the sculpting tab. Now I can also press Z and move my mouse down to go into the material preview just so we can preview it. And then what we need to do is actually turn off the symmetry by clicking that button right there. Then what we can do is press G to go to the grab brush, and you can also press F to make your brush bigger, and we can actually change the character a little bit. So one thing that I really like to do is make one of his eyes kind of coming up. So I'm just using my mouse. You could also just use your drawing tablet if you'd like to, if you have a drawing tablet. It's pretty easy either way though. With a mouse, you can just kind of tap. So I'm going to make one of his eyes kind of opened up bigger, and then this eye, I'm going to make this eyelid a little bit smaller, kind of coming in a little bit, something like that, kind of bring that in. So you can see he's already getting a lot more of an expression, because you can see one of these eyes are like bigger and one is smaller. So I do really like that look. Kind of bring this down a little bit, maybe bring this forward, something like that. Maybe even bring this down even more. And then you can also play around with like the mouth. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pull this side of the mouth up, and you could also pull the cheek up a little bit, because his mouth is moving up a little bit. And then this side, I can kind of push this down a little bit. So now you can see he's going like, hey, hey. And it just gives so much more expression and life to the character. So I really like doing this on my sculpts, just right at the very end of my sculpts. So like this, I'm going to pull down, this I'm going to pull up, really just whatever you can do to make the symmetry different. So it's different on either side. And also we could do that for the ear. So it's really fun to like make one of the ears kind of like cocked over or something. So you could use the grab brush, kind of pull the ear around, maybe change the rotation of the ear, something like that. And then what you can also do with the ear, this is really fun to do. You can click right over here on the pose brush. And then if you make your brush bigger, by pressing F with the pose brush, you can see if you move it over, it's going to add that little line. And if you click and drag, you can see it's going to kind of tug the ear around. So you can just make the ear kind of coming down a little bit. Pretty easy to do, pretty basic. You could do that for other parts of the mesh as well, but other parts of the mesh don't work so well, because it works better for thin objects like this, like it works better for limbs and stuff. So you could try to do this and like rotate the ear, but you can see that's the kind of problem that you can have, where it can kind of rotate the entire thing. So I just find it works best for the ear, but you could rotate the entire ear like that. So I'm going to go back to the grab brush and just kind of do some subtle tweakings just to make him look different on either side. And then also something that really helps as well is changing these shoulders. So what I think I'll do, because this is kind of coming up and his mouth is coming up like this, I think what I'll do is make this shoulder coming up. So I'll just kind of tap and pull that shoulder up, and then this shoulder, I'll pull that down. And you could also kind of rotate it a little bit. If you want to kind of make him look like his head is rotated slightly, you could like rotate his shoulders, and that'll kind of make him look like he's rotating his head a bit. Kind of looks like he's going like that, you know? Just really gives expression. Kind of looks like he was just running up, and he's kind of like, maybe, I don't know, looking for some nuts or something. Maybe he's gathering nuts for the fall, something like that. Okay, there we go. Really gives a lot more expression. It is subtle, but it really helps to just really make the character look nice. All right, there we go. So that is really quite cool. I'm going to go back into object mode. Actually, I'm in sculpting tab, so I'm just going to go back over to the layout. Now, if you wanted to, you could select the entire character, and then you could like rotate him. So if you wanted to be like that or that, you could just rotate him a little bit, scale him. And then also these eyes here, we can actually make him looking around. So what we need to do is we need to apply the mirror modifier, because we want to make the eyes going in the same direction. And right now, if we try to rotate this, the eyes are going to go opposite. So, you know, you could make him... So you could make him cross-eyed like that if you want to, but I don't want to do that. So I will just apply the mirror modifier, and then I can rotate the eyes together. So if you click right over here on the modifier properties, you can click on the tab and then just click on apply. And now you need to be in object mode to do that. So just change it to object mode and then click on apply. All right, so now that that's applied, if I tab into edit mode, you can see there's no mirror modifier, and I can just rotate this. So if you double tap R, that's going to do the trackball rotation. The problem with this is that right now it's rotating both of the eyes from the center. What I want to do is rotate both of the eyes from their own center. So to do that, you can click right up here to the pivot point, and right now on the default it's set to median point, but I want to change it to individual origins. And that way, if I double tap R, you can see that now each eye is going to be rotated on its own origin. So you can like make him like looking up, looking down, really just give him whatever expression you want. I can go into the camera view. I think since he's kind of leaning over like this, if he kind of has his eyes looking over like that, that just really improves the expression. So you can see now he's kind of looking over. So it just gives so much more life to the character. So I think doing all this can really help. And then just one more thing with the lighting, I think adding just a little bit of a fill light right over here would be good, because if I go into rendered mode, you can see that's bright and that looks good, but then right here, it just looks a little bit dark. So what I'm gonna do is press Shift A, and I'm just gonna add a circle. I'm going to tab into edit mode, and then I can just press F to fill a face in that circle. And then I can press tab to go back to object mode. So now I can press R to rotate, G to grab, and just kind of bring it down just so that we can make this little light here. And then you can click right here on the material properties. And again, if you're using Blender Eevee, then you could just use some other light. Like you could just add maybe a point light. I'm just going to click on new here. And then the surface, instead of it being a principled, I again need to set it to an emission so that it emits light. So now if I just start to turn this up, you can kind of see what it's doing. I don't want it to be super strong because then it will like get rid of all the shadows, and we do want shadows because it helps to show the form of the object. But maybe just changing this up to something like a 5, and then you could change the color. So if you want to make maybe like a little bit of a blue color or maybe a bit of an orangey color. I think adding like a warm color, like maybe an orangey color, can really help. I do really like that. So you can see without it, and then with it just adds a little bit of warmth there on the side of the character. All right, there we go. So now I'm just going to render this out, and then we will do just a little bit of compositing to finish up this image and make it look really nice. So right over here on the render properties, I'm just going to change the render samples to 200. You can change it to whatever it looks good for you, and then just press Ctrl S again, and then I'm just going to press F12 to render out the image. All right, and it finished. That is looking really great. Let's just do a little bit of compositing now, and then we will finish this up. So we can just click right over here on the compositing tab, and then we can just click on use nodes. Let me just also drag this down because we don't really need the timeline. So I'm just going to do a very simple compositing. I'm going to press Shift A and first just add a denoise node. So just add the denoise. We're going to drop it right in there. And then I have the Node Wrangler add-on turned on. So what I can do is just hold down the Control and Shift key and click on the denoise, and that will add this viewer node. And then we can preview it in the background. But if you don't have the Node Wrangler add-on turned on, you can just search for a viewer node. Just add the viewer node and then plug it up. All right, now you can see this in the background. If you press V, that's going to zoom the background out. And if you press Alt V, that's going to zoom the background in. So you can just zoom that out to something that you like. And then I just want to add kind of like a basic color in the background. So I'm going to press Shift A, and I'm going to search for an alpha over. So I'm just going to add the alpha over right here. And then the image, I actually need to put this into the bottom alpha over. That bottom image right there. And then this top one right here, this can just be whatever color you want. So I think just making like a kind of a bright blue color, not too saturated. You don't want it to be too glaring and take away from the character, but just something subtle, just something like this in the background, I think looks really nice. And then if you wanted to, you could also do a little bit of color correction. So you could press Shift A and search for like the RGB curves. I like that one. So you could play around with the RGB curves if you want to just change the colors a little bit. So I think I will just kind of drag this out, just make it maybe slightly more contrasty. And then if you want to add like more red or less red. All right, so there we go. That is going to be good. I am good with that. So to save this final image, you can press F11, and that's going to go back to the render result. Then we don't want to see the render result. We want to see the viewer nodes that we can preview what the compositing actually did. So if you click right up here, you can click on viewer node, and there we go. There is our final image. So to save this image, you can just click on image and then just click on save as. All right, I'm just going to save this as final render 1.png with the rest of my files and just click on save as. All right, there we go. So it has been kind of a long tutorial, but here we go. Here's the finished chipmunk character. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and thank you so much for watching. And this is actually the 4th time that I created this. I'll throw the other ones up on the screen so you can see like the process. So I started out with that one and then went to the next one. The next one finally got this one. I actually like the 3rd result. The 3rd result looks pretty good. The 3rd and 4th result, the one that I did right before this tutorial and this tutorial, I do like both of those. They look pretty good. So that's going to be it for this tutorial. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. And if you'd like to help support this channel, I am trying to make Blender content for a living. So if you'd like to help support me, some great places to do that over on my Gumroad store and my Patreon page. And on my Gumroad store and Patreon page, I have 3D models and assets that I sell. I also have artwork project files and tutorial files like this one here. You can purchase these tutorial files if you'd like to. And I also have procedural materials and other things like that on my Gumroad and Patreon. And also, if you'd like to help support me here on YouTube, I have the YouTube memberships. So you can see that right down there next to the subscribe button, there's that little join button. And so if you click on the join button, you can join my memberships here on YouTube, and you'll get some cool perks here on YouTube and also help to support me monthly. So if you'd like to help support the channel, those are some great ways to do that. But again, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in a future video.